Hi, you guys. This is Misty with Cancerian Chronicles. Welcome or welcome back. So I am going to be channeling some messages. No cards or anything, no tools. So let's get started. Whenever you decide that you want to improve, you have to really mean it this time. It feels like you're on a merry-go-round with no starting point, no real plan for how you want to see things through. In life, you have choices, and your choices will be determined by the goals that you set for yourself. That's where you need to start. If you are struggling, if you're going on this merry-go-round, you're not making progress with what you wish for your life, it is because you're spending all of your time wishing, fantasizing even, but what have you done to bring it into fruition? All of your goals must be, you guys, I'm hearing smart, so I feel like I need to take a pause. I'm hearing smart. So one of the things that we talked about or learned about when I was a teacher, and then, as a principal, we talked about SMART goals. That was, everyone was required to have goals, whether it's, your students, whether it's the teachers, whether it's the administrators. You have to have goals for your entire school. So, and everything had to kind of be aligned, so to speak. So I guess if we're going to talk about this like in the real world, or how it could relate to you outside of like an educational environment, because that may not be your spiel, right? But let's say overall you have a goal and you say that the goal is just for you to be happy. Well, the first thing that you need to understand is that that's not necessarily, I don't want to say it's not a good goal. Well, for the purpose of this, it's not a good goal, because goals are meant to be smart. We set SMART goals. And so SMART goals were goals that were specific, they were measurable, they were achievable, they were relevant, and they were time bound, right? So, and that's kind of like, to say that you just want to be happy, well, that's not necessarily a goal. That's just a state of being, I guess I would say. Like, who doesn't want to be happy? Who wants to live their life being miserable? So you would have to spend a little bit more time to kind of flesh that out a bit. Because, okay, so digging a little bit deeper, what do you mean specifically about you want to just be happy? What are some things specifically that make you happy? And when I'm talking about like, overall, we're talking about being happy. Okay, so when it comes to your work, what's something specific that is going to make you happy? When it comes to your relationships, with love, with friendships, however you want to set that up, what makes you happy in a relationship? When it comes to your self-care, when it comes to your body, when it comes to your looks, like what is going to make you happy specifically? Like, what does that look like? So just saying that you just want to be happy, I hate to break that to you, but that's not really a goal, okay? It's not considered a goal that you can, it's not a good goal, okay? You want to, because you can't, okay, so part of it is, it has to be measurable. Like, how do you measure your happiness? Okay? Because, if you're like, are you measuring it by how many times you laugh a day? Are you measuring your happiness by how many times you smile a day? Like, how are you going to measure your happiness, right? So if it doesn't meet each of those criteria, with it being specific, it needs to be clearly defined. It needs to, like, there should not be any room for confusion, doubt, ambiguity. Like, what is it specifically that you want? Because, being happy is pretty vague, right? Measurable means that the progress that you're making towards your goal, it has to be quantifiable, right? Like, you have to be able to measure whatever this is. So like, the example that I gave with the happiness thing would be like, okay, well, I'm smiling 5 times a day, like if we just want to stick to something to do with happiness, but, it will be like, it still can't be a goal because it's not specific enough. But if we're going to use it for the purposes of like, what does it mean to be measurable? I'm going to laugh 10 times a day. I'm going, like that would be some of the ways that you would be able to measure that. But I mean, not really, because some people laugh to keep from crying. So that doesn't necessarily mean that you're happy, but you set your measurements how you want, right? It has to be achievable. So they have to be realistic. They have to be within reach, and you have to take into account your resources and the time that you have. So let's step away from the happiness part, because we already said that can't be, like, that's not specific enough. It's too vague. So that can't necessarily be your goal, right? I mean, you can do what you want, but like we're talking about something where you want to accomplish your goal in life. So let's talk about a common goal that people have is, I'm hearing the song, I want to be a billionaire so freaking bad. So a lot of people have the goal of being like a millionaire or a billionaire, right? And that could just be because, that's just a number that, that's just something that we all aspire to, or, whatever. I mean, I don't know what the reason is, right? I don't know why that $1 million or $1 billion is the magical number, but a lot of people have that goal. And so for each person, this is going to be different, but you have to think about, like, is that achievable with the current resources and time that you have available to you right now, right? Like, do you have access to, the resources and the time that's going to get you to that particular, dollar amount, if that's what your goal is, okay? So let's say that right now you don't really have, the time or the resources to become a billionaire. And, like we're talking about it being achievable, like right now you're making, I don't know, let's say you're making $50,000 a year, and you're hustling to get your 50,000. You don't really have much time to do anything outside of that so that you can work towards, your goal of becoming a millionaire. And like the job that you have right now, you're limited, right? Like you're getting paid by the hour, and there are not even enough hours in the day for you to ever be able to attain that amount, right? Like you're only going to make, X amount of dollars, you're $50,000 a year, we'll say that, right? So maybe you don't have the time or the energy or the resources to jump to, making $1 million or $1 billion. But, I guess maybe you can find the time and energy and resources, or you have like an ability to, go in and ask for like a raise. You may be able to put forth like, an hour to a side hustle, and you feel like you can, be profitable with it. And in the meantime, like you can turn that 50,000 with like certain things that you do. You can bump that up to like, let's say 75,000, a year. And that could be like your first goal, because just because you say like, okay, well, my goal is I want to make $75,000 a year, as opposed, instead of the 50,000 that I currently make, like that, just because you say that your goal is $75,000 a year, you guys, like once you attain that, like you're not locked in for life with that amount. Like every year or every time that you reach your goal, what you're supposed to do is create an even bigger goal, a better goal, right? So I know people talk about, like moving the goalpost. Well, yeah, that's what you're supposed to do when it comes to, trying to get to your ultimate goal, I guess, so yeah. And so we talked about achievable. Relevant is it should align with your overall objectives and values, ensuring that they contribute to a larger purpose. So I can say, like, if you have like a monetary goal, right? And you don't have to, like, you can pick up whatever goal or set of goals that you want. But like, let's say that you're still, you're dead set on this happiness goal, right? That we've already said that's not specific enough. But if you focus on like increasing your finances, that will allow you to do a lot of the things that you feel like, that you desire to do, that you want to do, and that could, increase your level of happiness, right? So you want that goal to be focused on like an even bigger goal. It needs to be aligned with like your bottom line of what it is that you ultimately want out of life, right? Another thing is that your goal should be time bound, right? So that's another, like, let's go back to the millionaire. We'll just stick to millionaire, right? Now, depending on where you are currently, because for some people that is realistic, right? But for others, like if it's not realistic, I just want you to understand that you don't have to just be limited to, like, don't feel like if you go for a smaller goal or a smaller dollar amount that you're locked into that for life. You can change that. You can increase that as soon as you reach your goal, because, like, let's say we're going to say you're making 50,000 and your goal is, okay, well, I want to increase that to $75,000, a year. And I want to accomplish that goal within, and you have to think about what's reasonable for yourself. And you may want to like bump it down. Like, let's say a year is more than reasonable. Like maybe you want to bump it down to 6 months, or like you want to get it done in 9 months if you feel like you need an extra push. But you have to know yourself, like if that is going to demotivate you, or if that's going to cause you to be in a panic, then maybe you need to bump it up and say, okay, I'm going to do this, in 15 months or, something like that. So you kind of have to know yourself and what motivates you, what demotivates you, how you work best. But the point is that you need to put a time frame on that. So like, let's say your goal is, okay, well, I'm going to increase my salary, or I'm going to increase my, my yearly income from 50,000 to 75,000 within, let's say 1 year. Once that 1 year mark hits, or as soon as you achieve that amount, then you can go ahead and bump that up. Maybe you need to double that and say, okay, now my next goal is 150,000, right? And you just keep doing that until you get to your ultimate goal. So I don't know, somebody needs to know that, right? But so I guess that's really what this is about, is someone needs to ensure that they are setting goals and that you're actually being very strategic in the goals that you're setting, and, make sure that they are specific, that they're measurable, achievable, relevant, and that they have a time frame put on them. Because otherwise, like, that's the difference between having an actual goal and just sitting there and wishing and hoping and wishing, right? You have to get out of that mode and, move towards, actually taking some actions. Okay. But what else do we need to know? That was stepping out of channeling. Hold on. Let's see if we need to anything else. I don't know. I keep hearing that song about, where he says, I want to be a billionaire. I just feel like, I have to say, like, what it is that you're hoping for. And it doesn't have to have anything to do with money, but it feels like, maybe someone has like a really big goal, right? So this could be for someone separate, one of you, some of you, or none of you, but maybe you just have a really, really big goal. And it's not to say that you cannot have a big goal, but someone needs to look at, like, I'm seeing a ladder, or not even a ladder. I'm seeing a set of stairs. So someone needs to stair step their way to the goals, because I feel like, it's almost like heart and your mind are just not in alignment. Like your brain, like your heart says, like, I want to make this amount of money, or I want to be married within, 3 months, or, something. Like, your heart is telling you one thing, but your mind is like, you're being ridiculous. Like, your mind is telling you that you're being ridiculous. So there's some type of disconnect. And, it's almost like you're going to have to play cheerleader to your brain, to your mindset, right? So or it's kind of like, you're going to have to set some smaller goals to get your mind, to get your brain to kind of back off or to calm down or to get used to feeling like it is always achieving its goals. It's always winning. It's always going to get what it wants, right? You're going to have to trick your brain. Like, you're going to have to show that. It's almost like you're going to have to prove something to your brain, right? Because it feels like your brain is just not going to take you at face value. So I don't know if that makes sense, like you guys let me know, but it just feels like your brain is telling you like, I need to see the proof. Like someone's brain feels like it's being gaslit, right? By the heart. I mean, I don't know. It's not funny, but it's kind of like this is all within one person. And it's like, yeah, there's a disconnect or, just not on the same page. So yeah. Okay. What else? Anything else? No, I feel like that's it. So that was just a quick little message for one of you, some of you, or none of you. I hope that it was helpful. If it was, let me know in the comments. But all right, I'll talk to you later. Bye.